Why do I recommend you to study Luciano Virgili? It is because his breath support and resonance control are entirely correct, aligning with the core principles of Italian bel canto. Although he mainly sang Italian folk songs, his vocal technique was fully consistent with true operatic bel canto, and his breath control even reached the level of Enrico Caruso. Why should we study Luciano Virgili? Using my breath distribution theory, we can define him as a full-range tenor. Based on my research, his voice itself is not particularly large. In fact, it could even be considered small. However, this does not matter because his abdominal breath support allows him to achieve excellent resonance. 1. Stable breath support, natural and smooth voice. Virgili's singing is always built upon solid breath support. Every note he produces is supported by his chest and abdominal breath, never excessively relying on oral or nasal resonance, nor forcing his voice. As a result, his sound remains round, free, and relaxed. 2. No pushing, no squeezing, no pressing. His voice moves toward the back of the throat. Many modern singers mistakenly push their voices into the oral cavity, nasal cavity, or even the mask, but Virgili does the exact opposite. He ensures that his voice moves toward the back of the throat, aligning perfectly with the true principles of Italian bel canto, just like Caruso and Mario Del Monaco, whose technique was also based on this fundamental approach. 3. Maintaining complete resonance even at a slow playback speed. Your experiment, slowing down the playback speed to 0.7x, proves that Virgili's vocal technique is correct. When a singer relies too much on oral resonance, their voice will sound hollow and weak at a slower speed. However, Virgili's voice remains full and connected, demonstrating his well-structured resonance and strong breath support. 4. Helps develop proper breath control. Studying Virgili allows you to experience the importance of placing the voice into chest resonance from the very first note, with breath support leading the entire singing process. This ensures that you don't force high notes. Instead, breath allows the voice to ascend naturally. You don't let the oral cavity dominate the sound. Instead, the voice flows steadily to the correct resonance point. You don't lose breath control. Instead, stable breath management is established from the very first phrase. 5. His voice fully aligns with the traditional principles of Italian singing. Virgili's voice could stand proudly even in the golden era of Italian singing. His tone is broad, rich, and unified, with all vocal colors integrated into a complete resonance system, avoiding any breaks or inconsistencies. Conclusion: studying Luciano Virgili means mastering the purest Italian breath support technique, not only for folk songs, but also for opera and bel canto singing. You can use him as a breath support model, and once you reach his level, you can further progress toward great singers like Caruso. At that point, I will practice with you and guide you on how to sing the most beautiful notes ever produced by tenors in history. My student reported to me, "I'm practicing the beautiful song Sogni di Gloria along with the great singing of Luciano Virgili. I slowed down the playback speed to 0.7x and clearly heard that his first note is always a chest sound." My response: "I always admire your ability to perceive your own voice. It is absolutely correct." Throughout the entire song, Luciano Virgili never once forces his voice into the mouth or the mask. Since that is incorrect, the voice should be directed in the opposite direction of the mouth and mask. Then it is correct. Do you understand? The voice must be sung toward the back of the throat. This is a goal. But before achieving the level of Luciano Virgili's back throat singing, a lot of breath support training is necessary. And of course, the first step is to correctly understand what breath support truly is. I can tell you that yesterday I searched YouTube for tutorials on breath support, and to my surprise, I couldn't find a single correct method. First of all, you and I must surpass everyone in terms of breath support. Caruso is the benchmark. Until we reach his level, we can learn from Luciano Virgili. From a purely vocal perspective, even though he sang Italian popular songs, the correctness of his breath support is entirely on the same level as Caruso's. My student's question: As my first exercise, I simply sang the song without trying to imitate him. When I placed my hand on my chest, I found that my first note was definitely not in the chest voice. The rest of the phrase was in the chest voice because my chest vibrated, but the first note was not. This is such a waste of breath. My response? My point is that you still need to imitate him. I know that even if you imitate him, it will be difficult to produce his voice, but that doesn't matter. I have told other students before, never sing a note on your own. We must find a reference, a sound to compare with, and practice getting closer to it. If you sing on your own, it will never be correct. You will only continue your incorrect singing habits, which will affect your future vocal production. We need a pure awareness of sound. Until we surpass Caruso, we must learn better vocal techniques, including those used by Caruso and even those that he never used, but others executed better. Do not lose confidence just because you cannot yet sing with Luciano Virgili's correct vocal production. At the beginning, it is impossible for you to achieve it. There are still many exercises I haven't told you about, many more. You need to practice before you can sing correctly. If your first note is not in the chest voice, then it will be very difficult for you to sing any song correctly. Some tenors in history also did not start their first note in the chest voice, but they had excellent breath support. That is another research topic. Your main task right now is to make sure that the first note of every song you sing is placed in the chest. At first, the sound will be very light, but that's okay. When you sing with chest voice, even if the sound is light, your natural resonance will function correctly on this proper vocal foundation, enhancing the volume. So don't worry. Once you can sing with the chest voice, you are on the right path and everything else will fall into place. Today's tenors, the moment they open their mouths, produce a large, mask-dominated sound from the oral and nasal cavities. Because of this, they will never be able to sing a song correctly in their entire lives. You are absolutely right. If the starting note is wrong, there is no need to continue singing, because everything after that will also be wrong. My friend's message. After realizing that my first note was incorrect, I started imitating Virgili. Now my first note also resonates in the chest, and the chest resonance has become more noticeable. I have discovered some benefits. The voice is freer, rounder, softer, and overall more beautiful. Breath control has improved, making adjustments easier. The abdomen remains engaged throughout the singing process, and from the very first note, I already know how it should function. The overall feeling is more coordinated because previously I instinctively followed two different paths, using mask resonance for the first note and only later engaging abdominal support. Now there is only one path from the start. The first note directly resonates in the chest. I now have a greater need for proper breathing, and I can clearly feel it. If my breath is incorrect, like a soldier escaping from a cage, I immediately notice it. My response? I truly appreciate your ability, especially in understanding software and learning so well. I was the same when I was young. In the past, I didn't want to point out the core issue because I didn't want to discourage your enthusiasm for singing. But now you have realized it yourself that your first note was incorrect, which confirms something I chose not to say before. This is excellent. Other singers all make the mistake of singing the first note incorrectly, but you have noticed and corrected it in time, which is the best outcome. You are living in an era where vocal pedagogy is full of mistakes. This is not your fault. Rather, it is the fault of a time that has abandoned the correct Italian bel canto technique, causing singers to deteriorate over generations. By standing on the right side of this issue, you will stand out. The 5 points you mentioned are all correct. The most important one is the fourth point, starting the first note with abdominal breath support and maintaining that state. This will make everything easier in your singing. Beyond these 5 points, there is another crucial aspect of learning, how to make your body structure more suited to a singing technique that relies on abdominal breath support. Do you understand? 1. For example, how should your feet be positioned? Should you stand relaxed, or should you maintain a certain sense of weight and grounding? 2. What about your abdomen? Should it be in a neutral, upright position? Should it protrude slightly forward? Or, as some say, should the abdomen contract as you exhale while singing? 3. What about your chest? Should you take in a full breath and expand it completely? Should it be completely relaxed? Or should you slightly expand the chest? 4. Your resonance chambers, such as the oral cavity and throat, how should they be positioned? Should the mouth and pharynx be relaxed, or should they maintain some degree of tension? 5. Your nasal cavity, if you don't feel a slight airflow through the nose while singing, your sound will lack brightness. So how should the nasal cavity function? Should it feel like when you have a runny nose? 6. As a tenor, what should the hard palate and soft palate be doing at the start of a note? This is something you must also understand. 7. What about the back of the head? Should it be lifted slightly? Should it move slightly backward? 8. Everything I have mentioned in these 7 points also needs to be coordinated as a whole. Singing is not the task of a single resonance chamber. It is the result of the coordinated participation of all resonance chambers. You need to understand and practice these aspects. As your level improves, I would be very happy to practice with you through voice training sessions. My student said, after slowing down the singing speed, it is almost impossible to produce sound using only the oral cavity. I think this method helps me lower my breath more quickly and easily while also forcing me to take deep breaths, which trains my breath control. These are my personal feelings. Now, I will continue practicing. I just wanted to report this to you and thank you again. Good night, Master. My response. What you need to focus on now is how to develop an instinctive demand for taking in a large amount of air. This is an instinct that must be cultivated. You cannot approach it the way you used to, trying to sing as many notes as possible in a single breath and making phrases overly long. While this may help develop the habit of inhaling more air into the abdomen, it also leads to abandoning the good habit of regulated and rhythmic breathing, inhalation. My Chinese brother had the same issue. He seemed to have no need to inhale, as if he could sing. This is also a bad habit. If you don't feel the need to inhale, it means you are not using true abdominal breath support. Using proper abdominal support requires inhaling a significant amount of air. As for what notes to sing, their length, dynamics, and how much air to inhale, these are additional aspects you need to learn, and I will teach you in the future.